Hello, hello, hello. We are live. I'm going to wait. I logged in a few minutes early so I could get people into the room and so that we can start on time. So if you're just now joining us, of course, I just joined. So we're going to start at the top of the hour in just a few minutes. So while we're waiting to start with all of the content, today is going to be all about phone interviewing and how to get yourself into the face-to-face interview. So what I'd like you to do, it looks like we've got people streaming in right now. So introduce yourself in the chat. Just put your first name and where you're from. And you know, I'd like to see where everybody's calling in from, as well as if you feel comfortable, go ahead and put what type of job you're looking for. You know, I was talking with Brian, my husband, and we were thinking it'd be really great to actually show what you're looking for so that if somebody else knows of that position, then they might contact you or reach out by chat. So go ahead and introduce yourself and put your name and where you're from. Just your first name is fine. And then if you want to disclose what kind of job you're looking for, go ahead and put that in the chat as well. So I'm going to take a look here. And welcome to everyone that is just joining us. We are waiting until the top of the hour to get started. All right. Hello, Doreen. Thank you. Welcome. Oh, Boise is one of my favorite places. Actually, I have had a lot of clients from Boise, believe it or not. And we probably have as many clients from Boise, Idaho than we do in Kansas City, Missouri, which is where we're from. So I love Boise. Thanks for coming in. Hey, Ray, how are you doing? Aircraft maintenance manager. Wow. Talk about a niche. That's fantastic. Yeah, Boise's great. And nobody wants to leave. Everybody wants to either work remotely or work in a Boise company. Nobody wants to leave for sure. Once you're in Boise, you don't leave Boise. So everybody, as you're starting to come in, welcome very much. And then what I'd like you to do, hi, Kristen. And all right, Allison, hello. And yes, I put all of your messages in my spreadsheet to answer later on today. So we're still waiting for the top of the hour. So as you come in, go ahead and let everybody know your first name and where you're from. And if you would like to add what kind of job you're looking for, just in case somebody else knows of a position out there that meets that. If you're open to relocation, you can certainly put that. Good morning, Tanya. How are you? Or good afternoon to some people because it's noon on the East Coast, or almost noon. All right, so we're almost ready. Continue to come on in and introduce yourself by letting everybody know where you're from and also what type of job you're looking for. We can put that down. I'm very interested to know too. And of course, I always have my ear to the ground. So if I happen to hear of anything, I can go through the chat logs. And trust me, I read the chat afterward, every single thing. So it helps me determine what I'm going to deliver the next week. So I really do read every single thing that you put in. Mark, hello, Mark. Good morning. How are you? And thank you for the happy birthday wishes a long time ago. I needed to thank you for that. Hello, Stephen. And as you guys are coming in, I know a lot of people just joined. So I'd love to hear where you're from and also what kind of job you're looking for. And if you're open to relocation, just let us know that as well. And perhaps we can know something about that industry or that job. We can possibly use this community to help people get employed. I would love to use the community in that way. So, all right. Hi, Peter. And hi, Pam. Nice to see both of you, kind of. Michael, I not see you, but nice to have you here. All right. And Fiona, good morning. Okay, so today is all about phone interviewing, and I'm going to teach you not only how to do a stellar phone interview and I'm going to give you a lot of handouts today. I've got a lot of extra resources I want to give you. So in addition to the phone interviewing and how to get into the face-to-face to interview, I'm going to cover all of the toughest phone interviewing questions, including how to answer the compensation question when a recruiter or an employer asks you in that very first phone interview, which is unfair. So I'm going to give you a lot of good languaging around that so that you don't have to give away that kind of information. There's a lot of different tactics that you can use on that, and it'll help you negotiate tremendously. So, hi, Susanna. Hi, Alexandra and Chip. Hello. And just let us know where you're from, and also let us know what type of job you're looking for. So if anybody knows of any open positions in that, then they'll be able to point you in that direction. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Get my drink. All right, let me go into my slideshow. Oh, yes, and LinkedIn. If you want to put your LinkedIn URL, if you want to link in with anybody here in the community, you can do that. I'm actually expecting perhaps over 100 people today. So let's see what we get. Let me get into my presentation. All right. So here we are. We're going to talk about phone interviewing and how to get into that face-to-face interview. Okay. Now, I do want to let you know that today, I know we're going to have a lot of people in today, but there have been a tremendous amount of questions about phone interviewing specifically, and a lot around phone interviewing with recruiters. And so I'm going to spend some time talking about that. And I'm also going to give you a list of the top 50 global executive recruiting firms so that you can do a search for those firms and talk with people, reach out to those people in the top 50 firms. So I'll give you that as a PDF a little bit later. But I wanted to let you know that today's presentation and answering questions, I think I'm going to extend it from 60 minutes to 90 minutes or about 90 minutes because of the number of questions that I received. So the content that I'm going to be teaching you is going to be probably 35 or 40 minutes worth of information. And then I'm going to give you 20, we'll go to the top of the hour. And I do understand if you're doing this on your lunch break that you may have to leave. So if you do have to leave before the 90 minutes is over, yeah, that's totally fine. And you're going to get access to the replay if you've registered for this. So we've got 69 people in here. Let's get started. All right. And let me move myself here. Give me just a second. Let's see. Let's go up to the top. All right. Very good. Okay. So first of all, phone interviewing and the information that I'm going to be teaching today. It's always a good idea to tell you why this is important so that you understand why I'm talking about it in the first place. So a first impression sticks with somebody. And of course, you're going to make a first impression in the phone interview. That first impression sticks with somebody 66% of the time. And believe it or not, this is what the psychologists say as far as studies go. They say that 66% of the time, that first impression doesn't change no matter how long you know the person. So if you're talking to the hiring manager, they're going to create in the first, depends on what study you're looking at, from the first 90 seconds to the first 5 minutes, they're going to create an initial impression, and that impression will stay with them. And then there's something called confirmation bias. It's basically a psychological principle that says if I have a good feeling about you, if you've made a good impression, I'm going to continue to look for good things to put into my head that will help define you as a good person or a good candidate or a good investment if you don't have any competition. And then if I have a bad impression, then I'm going to look for bad things to continue to add to that list of things so that I confirm that my first impression was correct. That's what everybody does. That's why it's really important that we create a fantastic first impression, that first 5 minutes or so of the phone call. And sometimes it is necessary to get past the gatekeeper, with the gatekeeper being a recruiter, an executive recruiter, and that could be an external recruiter that's retained, or a contingency recruiter, which means they get paid as a percentage of your salary once they fill the position. Or if it's an HR person, so let's say an HR manager or even an HR rep who is the gatekeeper. Sometimes you got to get past the gatekeeper. So we're going to talk about the difference between talking to gatekeepers and talking to the hiring manager the first time out. So I do want to explain also that the goal of the first interview, the phone interview, is to get that next interview. That's the whole goal of that first interview, is to get that next interview. So we're going to talk about some of the big basic principles of phone interviewing. And one of those is asking for that next interview. And I'll show you how to do that. So here's what we're going to cover today specifically in this presentation. And of course, at the end of this presentation, I will be giving you these slides so that you can have these as a PDF to take notes on. So what we're going to cover today are developing your 3 core strengths. And I'll explain why the 3 core strengths are so important and how you can develop your own core strengths. And I'm going to give you some examples of what those core strengths might be. And then I'm going to go over the 5 things that employers and recruiters are looking for. You know, I get the question all the time, what are employers and recruiters looking for in that first interview? What is it that they want to know? So I'm going to give you, actually, if you can memorize the 5 things that they really want to know and the answers to those, then you're going to be golden. That's all you have to do, is know those 5 things, and you're going to be really well prepared for the phone interview. And then, of course, I'm going to help you answer the premature compensation question. And I call it premature because what we're talking about is using that compensation question as a filter to filter you out in the beginning of the process. That's not fair to you because you don't know enough about that position in order to know what it is that that you would want from that. What they are asking you really is, how much does it take to pay your bills? How much are you expecting to make? Not market value for the job that you're applying for. And that's not fair. So we're going to turn the tables on them, and we're going to make sure that, you know, there's an axiom that says the first person to mention a dollar amount loses in negotiation. And so I'm going to show you how to make them be the one to say the first number. And that way they're setting the bar and you're not setting the bar too low. It can actually make you, I've seen this make people tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what they were making before, simply because they don't tell what they're making at the very beginning of the process. You really don't want to negotiate compensation until they've offered you the job, because then you have much more leverage. Okay, so first we're going to cover some of the basics, all right? Before we cover the basics, now that we've got a full house here, I'd like to put together a poll. I'd like to start a poll for you guys, and that is, I really want to know, how confident are you right now before you learn all of this information about entering a phone interview? So do you feel extremely confident? Are you mildly confident that you're going to be prepared? Are you a little apprehensive, but you usually perform, pretty well? Or are you extremely nervous that you're going to bomb the interview? So I'd really like to get a bead on where you guys are at as far as feeling about phone interviewing specifically. And then after I present this information, I'm going to ask you again so that I get an idea of how effective my training has been today. So we've got, looks like 61% are mildly confident that they're prepared for the interview. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and end that. So that tells me that over half of everyone by far are mildly confident that they're prepared for the interview, and only 8% are extremely confident. Good to know. Good to know. All right, I'm going to go back to my chat. All right, excellent. And I also want to let you know we've got 3 moderators on today. Lacey, who is my lovely and talented assistant. She's actually on vacation today, but she's showing up for the live stream to help moderate. And then I've also got my husband, Brian. He's going to be on answering your questions, as well as one of my top coaches, Philip Brown in the UK. And he's going to be answering your questions as well. If you've got any questions around phone interviewing, I'd love to know what they are, because I am going to be explaining answers to the live questions. So both Philip, well, all 3 of them are going to be texting me the questions that come in, and I'm going to read them from the texts. Okay. So as we're going through this information, if you have if there's any question that comes up for you, go ahead and put it in the chat, and then I can answer it toward the end of our call today. And there's some more people that just joined, so I just wanted to let you know we are going 90 minutes today, although the content is only about 35 or 40 minutes. However, after that, I'm going to be answering a lot of your questions. I had so many questions come in over the last couple of weeks around phone interviewing and around recruiters specifically. So we're going to talk a lot about recruiter interviewing and also phone interviewing. So let's cover the basics of phone interviewing. So the first thing you need to remember is that you've got to polish up your cell phone voicemail message. So if you're in a job search, make sure that your voicemail message is very professional. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I've called a brand new client and I hear beep, you know what to do, beep. You don't want that. You definitely don't want that. So please make sure that you've got your full name. And I like the following sentence, something like, "Hi, you've reached Tammy Kabell," and you don't even have to mention where you're working. You just say, "You've reached Tammy Kabell's voicemail, and I'm away at the moment, but your call is very important to me. So I will get back in touch with you as soon as possible. Please leave a message and I'll be in touch with you very soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Beep." Okay. So that's a great way to say a phone message. And also keep in mind, you can send somebody like an employer or a recruiter to voicemail, because if it's not the right time for you to have an interview, you don't want to engage with them in an interview ahead of time. So, because you're not going to be ready. You're not going to be prepared with all of your notes and your resume in front of you and your calendar and everything that you need to actually have a good interview. So send them to voicemail and call them right back and schedule a time. So then also make sure the phone, like I said, make sure the phone interview is the right time for you, not just for them. I am a strong believer that if you pick up the phone and you start interviewing right off the cuff without any preparation, you're giving yourself a big disadvantage. You've got to do some research about the company, about the person. As a matter of fact, if you didn't listen to last week's live stream where I talked about the best way to prepare for an interview prior to the interview, then put in chat that you would like us to email you the link to the replay, and we'd be very happy to do that. So just put that in and we can get that to you later today. That could be a game changer for you as far as how you get ready for interviewing prior to the phone interview. So do not take the phone interview just because somebody calls you. That's giving them a less than stellar first impression. And you always want to give them a stellar first impression, because remember, that first impression stays there definitely 66% of the time. All right. So the next thing is that you've got to have a solid connection on your phone. Now, most everybody is using their cell phone these days for interviews, but you've got to make sure that you've got really good Wi-Fi, really strong Wi-Fi signal, which means sit next to your router if you need to, and make sure that the phone isn't going to drop the call, or that you're going to, it's a bad connection and they miss out on part of your answers. That's really, really important. Most people don't even think about that, but I want you to make sure that you've got a solid connection on your phone. All right. Number 4 is have your resumes, your notes about the company, the research, the questions that you want to ask. You want to have all of that in front of you, because a phone interview is an open book test. So keep that in mind. If it's an open book test, you want to have all your cheat sheets in front of you. So if you don't know how to put together a cheat sheet, again, ask for last week's live stream in the chat, and we'll get you a copy of that replay, because it talked about how to put together a cheat sheet for interviewing. All right. So make sure it's at a time and place where you are at your best. And then finally, at the end of the interview, you've got to remember you are the product or the service, and you are also the salesperson of that product or service. They are investing in you, whether this is the gatekeeper or the hiring manager. You've got to ask for the sale, with the sale being the next interview, but you want to make it really natural. So for instance, if you're talking to the recruiter or someone in human resources, you might say, you know, after talking with you, I'm even more excited about this position than before. Is there a possibility that I could talk with the hiring manager? Sometimes just asking that will get you into the face-to-face interviewing, or these days it might be a Zoom interview versus a face-to-face interview. So go ahead and just ask for that next, instead of saying, what are the next steps, which is really passive. You don't want to say, what are the next steps? You actually want to say, how, you know, if it's, especially if it's the hiring manager, if you're talking to the hiring manager on the phone, if they're local, you might say, you know, I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I'm really excited about this. Is there a time next week that we can meet in your office to talk in more detail about the challenges that you're experiencing as a company? Or it could be, so are you planning on eating next week? Because if you are, I'd be very happy to take you to lunch sometime. Does Wednesday work for you? I'd love to have lunch with you. Something like that. And that way you're asking very conversationally for that face-to-face interview and to move forward in the process. Sometimes asking is all it takes to nudge them a little bit and get them to talk with you face-to-face or on video. So you can even ask for a video conversation. If they're not local, what you would do is either ask for, you know, I'd love to meet you on video. Do you use Zoom? You know, and then set up a Zoom call. Or you could also, if you're talking to the hiring manager on the phone call, you can also ask if there's anybody else in the leadership team or anyone else on their team that they would want you to talk to. So you might say, I'm really, you know, I'm very interested in this position. You've said a lot of great things about the company and the position itself, and I've really enjoyed talking with you. Is there anybody else that you'd like me to talk to get an idea of really the type of culture that you have and whether I'd be a good fit? Something like that. So you just want to ask, and asking for the sale, asking for that next step sometimes is all that you need. All right. Great. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about 3 core strengths. Now, let me explain what this means. The 3 core strengths, I want you to think of a Venn diagram. It's really the intersection of 3 things. Your 3 core strengths, 1, 2, and 3, are what defines you and how you do business. In other words, who you are, right? It defines who you are and how you do business. And then secondly, it's what separates you or sets you apart from your competition. So how are you different than other people that they may talk to? And then finally, it's what the market demands. And another way of saying that is what employers are looking for, what the hiring manager is looking for. So you want to be attractive to a hiring manager. So you want to think, okay, the person that was going to be my boss, what are they looking for? What is it that they're that they want in this type of job. If it's let's say a director of marketing job, the VP of marketing, what are they going to be looking for? And so you would put down what you do and how you do business, what sets you apart from your competition, and then what employers are looking for, what the hiring manager is looking for. Now, the reason that you want 3 core strengths is that there is a marketing rule of 3 that states if you have 3 things in a row, for instance, this, and this, if you have 3 things, it's easily remembered, it's easily repeated, it's very easily understood. People will remember those 3 things. So if you have 3 core strengths, and at the end of your introduction, how you answer the tell me about yourself question, at the very end of the introduction, if you say, as a result of that experience and my education, I really feel like I'm strong in 3 core areas, or in 3 key areas, with the first being number 1, with the second being number 2, and then finally being number 3. Now, when you say it that way, they will automatically write it down. Especially in a phone interview, there's going to be silence on the other end because they're writing down those notes. So give it to them in a way that encourages them to write those 3 core strengths down. Because when you have a group of 3 things, it's easily remembered. And you want to be remembered for 3 things. It's a very easy, streamlined marketing message so that they will remember you long after the interview. Because if you give them 5, they're not going to remember all those. If you give them 2, it's not really enough. 3 is absolutely perfect. So be thinking about a couple of things. I've got a couple of questions you can ask yourself. One of those is, what have you done over and over in your career that has made a substantial impact for your employers? So are you someone, like I mentioned in a prior live stream, are you someone that makes a company money or saves a company money? So go ahead and put down, list those things that you're really good at over and over again. And then what's been the secret to your success? Or you could call it your secret sauce. I know Brian, my husband, calls it your superhero identity. What's your superhero strength? What's your superhero identity that has made you successful? What are those things? And you want to write down 3 of them. And I'm going to give you some samples of some of the ones that our clients have. And I'll tell you, the way that we come up with people's 3 core strengths, and we do this in our branding process. And the way that we come up with them is we're looking at trends in your experience. So if you've done the same thing over and over again and you've done it really well, then you're an expert at it. And an expert doesn't mean that you're a published author or a nationally known speaker or anything like that. It just means you know more about that particular subject than the person sitting across the desk from you. So if you're, for instance, a supply chain expert, or supply chain optimization expert, then don't be afraid to say that. People will hire experts faster, they'll pay them more, and they will negotiate with them better, faster, or easier than they will just a winning candidate. So you want to be seen as an expert in something. So think about the 3 things in the trends of your achievements, of your experience. What have you done over and over again? For instance, do you come in to change operations and turn it around in order to make it profitable? In other words, you're an operational turnaround expert. Or have you, are you the fix-it guy? You can solve problems that nobody else can solve, and they bring you in to solve the problem. What is it that you're really, really good at? Those 3 things that set you apart from your competition, that you're better at than most people, and then what's going to be attractive to an employer. And also, I guess I would say even one more, and that is, do you want to continue to do it in your next job? Because you may be really good at overcoming like turning around underperforming operations, but you may not want to do that. You may not want to get into an operations that's underperforming right now. So be thinking about how you're defined, because this is the definition of who you are and how you do business. All right. So I'm going to give you some examples of some core strengths. So it's a little hard to see there, but it quickly contributes to the company's bottom line, consistently Consistent high productivity with impeccable quality. So it's really hard to have productivity and quality at the same time. So if you've been able to do both, that's something that stands out. If you're extremely deadline oriented, which actually helps as a project manager, or if you're someone doing a lot of different things where there's a lot of very quick deadlines, that will help. Or if you're highly creative in your problem solving abilities. So I'll give you some more too. Impeccable written and oral communication skills. So if you're really good at communication, especially if you're even just like an operational leader, if you're really good at your written and oral communication, then absolutely say so. If you've got enormous work ethic. Now, in all of these, what we're looking for when we do branding are there enough achievements that fit that particular strength that we can make a whole paragraph about it? So be thinking about your entire career and think about, for instance, if you have enormous work ethic, do you have a paragraph's worth of achievements that speak to your work ethic, or your expert problem solving, or your process improvement? Have you been able to improve processes, streamline processes over and over again so long that you've been able to, that you've got a whole paragraph full of good information? So be thinking about that. If you want we've got a pack of sample resumes. If you want access to our sample resumes that give the 3 core strengths for different types of roles, then just put that in the chat. We'll make sure that you get the sample resume pack, and it's got 5 different samples there. And I think there's finance, sales, marketing, IT, operations, I believe. That's what those are. So if you'd like to know what those core strengths are and how we put them into a resume in a functional format that's industry neutral, just let us know. And if you want to make it a private message, you certainly can do that if you'd like. All right. So here's some more, just one more page of core strengths. Impeccable attention to detail, superior work ethic, strong leadership abilities, and highly successful in cost control. Now, one more thing about these core strengths. When you're in an interviewing process, you want to make sure these core strengths are the 3 things that you want them to remember you or remember about you when you leave the hiring process. So whether it's a face-to-face interview or a phone interview, you want to let them know that these are your 3 core strengths, because the achievement stories that you tell should all revolve around the 3 core strengths, so that when you leave that room, if this is a face-to-face interview, or when you hang up the phone, if it's a phone interview, that interviewer is thinking, yeah, they really are good at those 3 things. That's really cool. That's marketing. You're marketing yourself in a hiring process. You're a marketing and you're also the salesperson. Okay, so now what I'm going to talk about is what employers and recruiters want to know. So what I want you to do is find and memorize the answers to these 5 questions, and you're actually going to be very well prepared. So I want you to write down these questions when you're taking notes. Why are you here? What can you do for us? What makes you different than others that we may talk with? Will you fit in with our values and culture here? And of course, how much are you going to cost us, which we're going to go into in great detail in just a little bit. So be thinking about those 5 questions. If you know the answer to those 5 questions relative to the company that you're interviewing with, the hiring manager that you're talking to, or the interviewer that you're talking to, if you know the answers to these 5 questions, you're going to do really, really well in your interview. You're going to be very well prepared. And I'm going to walk you through each of these 5 questions because it's worth some discussion on each of these. So the first one is, why are you here? Pardon me. Now, that's just a way of saying, why do you want this job? Why do you want to work at this company? Why do you want to change industries? Why do you want to go into this industry? Or if you're in the same industry, you don't have to worry about that. But really, What you want to be able to tell them is why you are so excited about this position. Now, I'm going to give you a caveat on this, because this is the one time that you are going to be very selfish. I hate to say, you're going to be very selfish, and that's counterintuitive. But most people are always trying to build value when they answer questions. In other words, if you're answering the question, what's your greatest weakness? You're always trying to turn that into a strength. Well, come on. Employers know that that's a bunch of BS. So don't do that. But when they ask, why are you here? It's not because in this position you can affect their bottom line. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for in this question, why did you apply for this position? Why do you want to work at this company? What they're looking for are very personal, very emotional types of answers, so that they know you're not leaving anytime soon. Attrition is very expensive. In fact, attrition, which means people leaving a position, it costs the company anywhere from 6 to 18 months of that person's salary to find somebody else, train them, get them up to speed, and get them to start paying for themselves. So you're very expensive if you leave. So what they want to know is, do you really get excited about this position? Are you really interested in working for this company? So you have to be specific in your answer. Let me give you an example. If they say, so why do you want to work here? You go, when I was reading the job description about this role, there was this part and this part and this part that I really got excited about, because not only is that what I do best, but honestly, that's what I love doing. I love, if I could get up every day and do that particular job and do those three things, I would be the happiest person in the world. When you say that, then they feel comfortable that even if you're overqualified, you will still stay because it's what you enjoy doing. So maybe it's something about the company, maybe it's something about the position, but it has to be specific and it has to be personal to you. Why are you so excited about this position? So be sure and write that down specifically. And if they don't ask, why do you want to work here? Get it out in your answers somewhere. Most phone interviews last about 30 minutes. So just know that you've got 30 minutes to tell your answers, which means if you've got achievement stories, like we talked about last week, of getting some achievement stories together ahead of time, just know that you want to prepare about 5 achievement stories for this phone call, this first phone call. You may only get out 2, maybe 3 different achievement stories in the first half hour, but you do want to get out why it is that you want this job, why you're so excited about this position, about this leader, maybe the person that you'd be reporting to. What is it about them, as far as you reading about them, or you found somewhere where they were quoted, or whatever it might be that you know about that person? Maybe you saw them in a speaking engagement on YouTube. So you know to do all of that research ahead of time. You want to tell them very specifically why you're here, why you want this job, and why you want to be at this company. Now, here's something else that employers and recruiters want to know, of course. What can you do for us? Here is where you build your value. So what can you do for us is the answer is based on what you've done for other companies in the past. Whether it's your current company, your most recent company, any company that you've worked for in the past, it's those achievement stories that will tell them what you can do for us. That's what connects the dots between what you've done in the past and what you can do for them, is those achievement stories. So you want to have at least 5 for the phone interview prepared, and then go over, make sure that you have about 2 or 3 of those stories that you're able to get out in the 30-minute interview. So what can you do for us is based on what you've done in the past. Those are the achievement stories. All right, now, how are you different than other candidates that we may talk with? This is number 3 that you're going to do. This is just like what you can do for us. This is going to be your 3 core strengths. So this is your brand. Think about your 3 core strengths as that the front of the can of soup, right? Because you're not just giving them the directions or the label and the nutritional facts. Yuck, that's boring. Give them the pretty picture of the soup in the front. So when you're talking about your 3 core strengths, that's what sets you apart from everyone else. So if you make all of your stories revolve around the 3 core strengths, then you are going to do really well, because that is the brand that they're going to remember long after the interview. If you're scattered and you're all over the place in the interview, then they're not going to really have a great stellar first impression of you. But if you say at the very beginning of the interview, when they say, tell me about yourself, you end with those 3 core strengths, then once you are done with those 3 core strengths, any stories that you may tell are going to be around those 3 core strengths, and that's your brand. Just make sure that you strengthen that brand throughout the entire 30-minute call. All right. That's how you can tell that you are different than everyone else. All right. So then let's talk about corporate culture. This is really important because I get a lot of questions for the live streams around corporate culture and how do you do your vetting ahead of time of a company to make sure that you fit in with their values and culture? Somebody said that they don't get a lot of traction with Glassdoor. I agree with that. I don't care for Glassdoor, and I'll tell you why. Because it is anonymous, you're going to basically find that there's a lot of people that like to bitch. And if they're anonymous, this is where they go to complain. And so just if you look at Glassdoor and you only see 2.5 stars, don't think that you're going to have a bad experience with that company, because the people that really like working there, are they actually going to, first of all, they're still working there probably. Are they going to take time out to go out to Glassdoor and tell people how happy they are? Nah, they're not going to. People don't usually do that. I mean, think about the last time you had a great customer experience with a service industry or a restaurant. They had good food. You know, sometimes you'll go and put up a Yelp review or a Google review, but generally speaking, you just have a great feeling about that place. Maybe it's a dry cleaner, but if you're really unhappy, you're definitely going to go out to the internet and tell the internet all about your bad experience. But if you're having a good experience, you probably won't say something, unless you're a really, really kind person, and then you would. So let's talk about corporate values and culture. Here's what I want you to do to prepare for this. I want you to be thinking about, what are your guiding principles? What is your corporate culture that you would fit in best with? Okay. So think about your core values. What are the things that are important to you? For instance, is quality very important? Is a strong commitment to excellence in everything that you do very important? Here's a big one. Integrity. Is it very important that you find a company with high integrity? If you have high integrity and you do everything with high integrity, in other words, you do the right thing and not just the easy thing, then you'll find that you want to say this proactively. In fact, here's what I would recommend. On any of the values that you hold dear, I want you to tell them proactively, because if it's a good match with them, they're going to be very impressed by your corporate, the values that you hold. If let's say you're really strong with integrity is really important to you, and you let them know that ahead of time. If they're not high integrity people, it's going to scare them off, and they're not going to want to hire you, which is perfect, because even though you may need the job, you don't want to work for a place that's not high integrity if integrity is something that's really important to you. So think about 3 to 5 core values that you hold dear, maybe 3, and then mention that sometime in the phone interview. It's a very good place to talk about your values, is that first impression phone interview. So let them know what's important to you. Do you have a strong customer focus, and really the customer guides everything that you do? And if that's the case, then you should say it proactively. A lot of people have asked me, how do I vet a company to make sure that it's exactly my kind of culture. Here's what I recommend. No matter what type of role you're going for, after you have the face-to-face interview, I would ask the hiring manager if you could talk to someone that's an individual contributor with the company. Because let's say it's somebody in sales. If it's an individual contributor in sales, they will tell you everything, because salespeople by nature like to talk, and they will talk with anybody that will listen to them. So if you ask them a lot of questions, and I'm not trying to diss salespeople. I love salespeople, actually. As you can tell, I talk a lot, so I'll talk to anybody who'll listen to me. But you could ask them, what's the culture really like? For instance, tell me really about work-life balance. I mean, do they own you here, or do they really respect work-life balance? What time do people get in the morning on a regular basis, and what time do people leave? There's some places that I've heard the owner, if there's no cars in the parking lot at 7 p.m., he got really upset, and he would email the entire company saying, there's not enough cars outside in the parking lot at 7 p.m. I want more people staying late. Seriously, that happened. It's here in Kansas City too. And if you've ever worked there, you know exactly where I'm talking about. So you want to think about the corporate values that you hold dear and tell them proactively. All right. Okay. And then now let's talk about the good stuff. How much are you going to cost us? All right. So I mentioned earlier in the hour that you cannot be the first person to mention a dollar amount, because the first person to mention a dollar amount loses. So really, they're asking you an unfair question during this first conversation. They want to know, how much is it going to cost to get you on board? So they'll say, what are your salary requirements? If it's a brand new first call, then I would start, whether it's a recruiter or someone within the company, internal or external talent acquisition person, then I would say, I don't really know what to tell you, because I don't know enough about the position. Once I learn more about the position, I would be very happy to talk about compensation with you. But I'd like to know, does it have P&L responsibility? How many people would I be managing? And what is the budget that I would be working with? Or how much travel is there? You want to know the scope of the responsibility in great detail before you can talk money. So then you could also say, well, I'm at a point in my career where really having a great fit and making a big impact is something that's really most important to me. And salary is really secondary. So as far as compensation, I'm sure we'll come to an agreement on compensation if the hiring manager and I both feel that I'm right for the position. That's what you want to say. That's another thing that you can say to push it off. Now, there are recruiters that will say, but I've got to have a number. I have to write down a number. And I've had clients tell me that the recruiter tells them, you have to give me a number, or we are not going any farther in this conversation. If that happens, what I would recommend that you say is, well, right now I'm actively interviewing and exploring other options, and I've been interviewing for things, for positions ranging from X to Y. All right, X to Y. Now, X to Y, I want it to be a big range. I want it to be around a $50,000 range. So you might say, I've been looking at positions ranging from 150 to 225. That's a very big range. So be thinking about what is, and if you're wanting to make a move up, make that lower end of the range your target, and then make the upper end of the range something that you want to go for as a stretch goal. So if you're making 120 and you want to make 150, then you say, I've been interviewing for positions that are paying anywhere from 150 to 225. Or you could be very specific and you could say 156 to 227, if you wanted to say something like that. So that gives them a range. And then you want to follow up with, well, do you know what the hiring manager is wanting to pay for this position? In fact, you can ask that question when you say, compensation isn't that important to me. I'm sure we can come to an agreement on compensation if we both feel that I'm right for the position. Do you know what the hiring manager is wanting to pay for this position? Oftentimes, a recruiter will actually give you the range right then. And then you know whether it's a good fit or not. And also, I can tell you from negotiating, because I've been negotiating for 17 years as far as negotiating executive compensation packages. If they say a range of this to this, and the top of the range is still lower than what you would like, I've actually seen them pay double what they say the range is. And here's how you do that. If you build your value as a standalone investment, they will pay much more for you than if you're just a winning candidate. So you have to show that you'll pay for yourself very quickly by all of the different ways that you've been able to make a company money very quickly. All right. So think about what you can do to explain your value, to bring out your value proposition, even in the phone call, so that when you say, how much are they willing to pay? And they say 150, like up to 150,000, and you were really looking more like 200,000, you could say, well, I'm sure we can come to an agreement on compensation. That's not going to be an issue. And then you build your value. Then it allows you to get past that filter, and it allows you to build your value so that when they do offer you the job, they will offer more than what you talk to. I'll give you a really, really good example. Our last client to get a role, I think his last, maybe it's next to last, but it was a couple of weeks ago, and he lives in Boise, Idaho. That's why I mentioned Boise at the top of the hour. And he had already talked with the hiring manager, and they had agreed, because the hiring manager was worried, since he came from a really large company, if they could afford him, because this company was 400 million and the other company was several $billion that he's working for. So they said 200 base, 100 bonus. So they really put a lot of emphasis on the bonus to put more of the risk on the employee versus the employer. So that was nice. He got 300, and he was making 187 before. So he was very happy with 300. Well, when he showed his value, and we were able to show his value to them, when the offer actually came in, even though they had already agreed that it was going to be 200 base, 100 bonus, it came in at, I believe, 235 base and 115 bonus. So he didn't even have to counter, because he was going to counter, even though they had agreed on it, but there was no reason to counter. So what we did is counter on vacation weeks, and he got some extra vacation, got a few extra weeks of vacation. So if you build your value, they are willing to pay more for an expert that will be the answer to their problems, and also the bridge that's going to take them to where they want to be. If you are both of those things and you build your value to that, they will pay you much more than what they originally thought that they were going to pay for the position. I've actually been able to double what that amount was, and that just blows it out of the water. So that's what I want you to say when they ask, what's your salary requirements? Now, if they say, what are you making right now? Or what did you make in your last position? You have to first do some searching on Google to make sure that that's a legal question to ask in an interview, because many states now outlaw that question. But you would say, is it legal to ask for compensation in Kentucky or something like that? So if it's legal, and even if it's not legal and they still ask you, here's the answer to that. Well, what I'm making now and what I would expect to make in this next position, in your position, that's really an apples to oranges comparison because of the difference in the responsibilities. So I'd like to know more about the scope of responsibilities before I answer how much I would expect to make in this position. In other words, give them that apples to oranges example. If they say, what are you making right now? Well, what I'm making right now isn't really relevant because it's not it doesn't have the same scope of responsibility. And that's actually the same if you're going from a big company to a little company, or if you're moving up in a big move up, you would want to say, well, it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. So what I'm making really isn't applicable here. So that's what you'd say, and that's how you get around that. So if you have any questions on that, let me know, and I'll answer them at the end of the hour. Okay, so just checking on time. So that's basically what we have as far as the presentation. So we are here to help. So we got my email address here, Tammy Kabell, and my husband, Brian Kabell, on here. And I'm also going to, before the end of the hour, let me go ahead and put the poll up. Now that you know that information, I'd like to then get to the other poll about now, after I've given you this information. Let's see, I got to publish the poll. Now that I've given you the information, now how confident do you feel going into a phone interview? 100%. Hey, that was really early, but I like that 100%. So now do you feel a lot more confident going into a phone interview on how to handle the interview questions, knowing that you've got the answers to those 5 major questions, and you also know how to handle the compensation question? Now, how do you feel about being extremely confident going into the phone interview? So it was 8% extremely confident at the beginning of the hour. Now we've got up to 55%. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. Just a quick poll. Thank you. Now, before we get into answering the questions, I do want to ask, I would like to know, and I'm going to open up the chat here. I'd like to know, what other topics would you like me to talk about on these live streams? So before I'm going to get into the questions, and I had a lot of questions. So I'm going to answer a lot of questions in the next about 40 minutes or so. So let me know what you would like to know in the, I'm actually going to do another poll. This might help you as far as giving you some ideas of, or giving me ideas of what to talk about. So when it comes to your job search, which of these most describes you? And this will allow me to figure out what I need to be talking about next. So are you experiencing the black hole syndrome when you submit your resumes? In other words, you keep putting in resumes and you're not getting any responses whatsoever. It's crickets. So if that's happening, let's see, got to publish that poll or else you're not going to see it. And then if you keep hearing that you're overqualified in your interviews, or even by email saying, sorry, you're overqualified, then let me know about that as well. And if you get the phone interviews, but you never make it past that point, so you get a lot of phone interviews, you're just stuck at that phone interview stage. And then also, you're always the bridesmaid and never the bride. In other words, you're a runner-up, or you're one of 3 that made it into the final round, but you just didn't get the job, and it happened to you over and over again. So it looks like by far that black hole syndrome is something that is most common. So that means that I can spend a lot of time in 2 different ways. One is specifically talking about resumes and how to get a resume that gets you the best attention. But then secondly, how do you put that resume into play that's different than just applying to posted positions? Because posted positions are where you get that black hole syndrome. But there are other ways to get in contact with people who are hiring that are outside the actual just a posted position. So just to give you some stats, the posted positions hold about 4 or 5% of all of the jobs out there. 4 or 5%. Recruiters hold about 11% of all of the jobs out there. This is nice. So you've got black hole syndrome is 60%. That's what I needed to know. So 11% is the recruiters. Now 85% is what you find that are not posted anywhere. That's where that hidden job market is, if you've ever heard of the unadvertised or hidden job market, and I can do a webinar or two about the hidden job market. Now, I did want to give you some files. I want to share with you the top 50 executive recruiters for 2020. So this just came out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So here's the top 50 executive recruiters, and that's a PDF that you can download. And then I also wanted to give you something that's a huge bonus, because this is something that I only give my paying clients, but I wanted to share this with you. And that is the 10 steps to a stellar phone interview. Now, I covered 5 of those when we talked about the basics, but I want to give you all of those. And it does talk about avoid premature negotiations until you've been able to really build your value, because then you have a lot more leverage. So there's the 10 steps to the stellar phone interview, and then the top 50 executive recruiters. Now, if you've missed some of our past live streams, I'd like to also share with you, if you're interested, a list of potential interview liabilities that you have to build proactive strategies around. So I haven't found anybody in my 17 years that hasn't had at least one type of like a liability. And a liability is really anything that keeps you from getting the job or even getting the phone call. Could be ageism, could be unemployment, could be gaps in your career. There's a whole list of them. So I've got a whole list of over 20 of them that you can choose from. Really, it's if you've got a proactive strategy to overcome things like that, then you'll be able to overcome any liability as long as you've got that strategy. Now, if you want the live stream where we broke it down to ageism, and we talked about the 5 things that you can do to overcome ageism. If you want that replay, just put that in the chat and we'll definitely get that replay to you. And I'm sure that Lacey is absolutely pulling her hair out, because I've been saying, oh yeah, we'll send this to you. We'll send this to you. We'll get it sent to you. Even if she's on vacation, I'll make sure that I can get it sent to you later on today as well. Okay, so also, if you've been on live streams before, you've heard me potentially talk about a group interview coaching program. Now, I'm not going to pitch the program because you can't buy it right now, but I do want to let you know that it is in the works, and we are going to do a group interview program, and it's going to be set at about a third to a quarter of the cost of the investment in a one-on-one coaching for interviewing. So if you're interested in learning more about that, but you haven't put down that you're interested, in other words, you didn't say yes in our earlier live stream, go ahead and say yes in the chat, and you can even make it a private chat if you want to. But I'd really like to know if you're interested in those, in knowing more about the group interview program. It's going to be, I'm so excited. It's going to be awesome. It's really, really cool. So, yes, please let me know if you're interested in hearing more about it, and we can contact you later. We're looking at probably a start date around August, or first part of August. So I'm not going to give too much away, because it's going to be really cool, and I'm not going to pitch it right now. I'm just letting you know. I want to know if you're interested, so I can gauge how big the group's going to be, because I really want it to be a small group, a pretty intimate group, because I want to give a lot of one-on-one coaching for you. So one more thing before I get into the questions, and that is here we go. I would like to offer up my husband to talk with you if you're interested in talking with us about anything that we do. So basically, we are not recruiters. We work on behalf of the executive job seeker. And you know, I didn't even introduce myself. So a lot of you, if you don't know what I do, you may not know career resume consulting. So we work on behalf of you, the job seeker, to make sure that you get your perfect job and you get paid what you're worth. And we do that in a few different ways. One is executive branding, where we're completely redoing your resumes, your LinkedIn profile. Everything is superstar. I like to call it Chuck Norrising your LinkedIn profile. And then we also show you how to get into that hidden job market or the unadvertised job market using LinkedIn. And then finally, we also do unlimited interview and negotiation coaching one-on-one. And then soon we're going to be doing the group program. So if you want to talk with Brian about any of those, or if you want to run by your resume with him and he can give you some tips on that, he definitely is not wired for sales. So you're not going to get a sales pitch, but he really is wired for teaching, for educating people. And he is as passionate about educating and helping people as I am. So we both are available for you. Brian is much more available next week because my schedule is pretty booked. So if you would like to talk with him, then feel free to go ahead and do that and just click on that. And it always says 15 people, no matter how many people sign up. So that never goes down, but we do get a good number of people talking to Brian every week after one of these. Okay, so let's get into the questions. Give me just a moment. Okay. I just want to make sure that I give you all the bonuses that I needed to give you before I got into the questions. Okay. All right. So I got to tell you, I got a lot of questions last time. We're going to go to the bottom of the hour. I do understand if you can't go past the top of the hour, but here's where we got a lot of really good value because I'm going to be answering your questions that you submitted throughout the week. Again, I can't get to everybody's questions, but I'm going to get to as many as possible because you guys gave me so many. Thank you so much. I really, it warms my heart to see all of these. So Jeff says, how do you approach finding a job when you cannot relocate because you need to stay near your kids? Good question. So as far as relocation, there are more and more people actually doing work from home, basically remote work. So the time to talk about remote work, and I did get a lot of questions around remote working. So if you've got a small city or a small job market that you're in locally, I would look locally first. And then if you're not finding anything locally, start to look at surrounding areas, larger cities, and go for positions that are out there in other cities. Don't talk with them about relocation until basically they've offered you the job. And then you've built your value and they really want you. They're the one. I mean, they say, I pick you. You are the one that I want to talk or that I want to work with. So once they do that, you have a lot more leverage. And then you can talk about the possibility of working remotely. And you know what? If it breaks down in the negotiation part because they won't let you work remotely, then it breaks down, and that's okay. You don't have to accept every offer that you get. You accept the offer that is perfect for you, also that pays you what you're worth. You don't want to make less than what you're worth, and you definitely don't want to go backwards in money when you're going from one position to another. Even if you're unemployed, don't go backwards because it takes too long to get back up to where you were before. That's my hard and fast rule right there. So wait to talk about the relocation / working remotely until they've offered you the job and you've got a lot more leverage. All right. So then let's see. Okay. How to find or create a career that I can work remotely from Heather. We just covered that, I hope. Art asks how to connect with executive recruiters. So I just gave you that list of 50 top executive recruiting firms. We're talking like Korn Ferry, Spencer Stewart, Russell Reynolds, Heidrick and Struggles, all of those really big ones. If you want to find people that are in those jobs, you can find them on LinkedIn. You can actually do a LinkedIn search and you can find the recruiters within those companies and then reach out to them, connect with them first, and then let them know that you're looking for, and in that connection request with recruiters, always say that you'd like to connect with them and you'd like to share your connections with them. so that they understand there's something in it for them to connect with you. And if you've got over 500 people that you're connected with, then I think that they would be very happy to connect with you. So that will make sure that they connect with you. And then once they connect with you, then reach out to them and send them a direct message and let them know that you're looking for a particular type of position and what it is that you're really good at doing. In other words, you might even put in your 3 core strengths of what you're very good at and say, if you've got any clients that are looking for someone with these strengths, I would love to have a conversation. That's what you say. Call to action there. All right. So let me look at Neil says, why don't recruiters follow up after they've made the first contact, told you that you seem to be a great fit, you're exactly what the client's looking for? Many times they've reached out, spent the time, but then failed to follow up with good news or bad news. Yeah. So let me explain a day in the life of a recruiter. This is something you have to understand. Recruiters are going to be very fickle. They're always going to be fickle, but that's because they're overworked. Most recruiters usually get between 100 and 150 unsolicited emails / resumes that they have to look through every single day. Plus, they've got to do their outbound calling and they have to interview candidates. So they are super, super busy. And if they find someone better or let's say the company goes in a different direction, they just don't have time to follow up with everybody else. And I hate to say that. And I've got a lot of colleagues that, as a matter of fact, you know what? Let me turn this off really quickly. And yes, okay. Let me turn this off. Hold on just a moment. There, now you can see me. All right, and my bouncy hair. All right, just know that I've got a lot of colleagues that are recruiters, and they are just super, super busy. The only times that they get a chance to look through all of those unsolicited resumes, they usually do it by tablet, and then they just have a whole stack of them on their tablet, and they're just swiping. You know, it's almost like Tinder. They're just swiping to see if there's anybody within a few seconds, if there's anybody that they want to talk to. That's why having a 3 or 4 page resume never works, because all of your good stuff is buried on page 2, 3, or 4. You may have an MBA. Some people even have a PhD and they don't tell them until they're back there, or a great certification. They got PMP certification, but they don't have it except on page 3 or 4. So be sure and this is what I always say, have a 1-page resume to give to a recruiter, and you will get a better response rate. Even if they say, do you have something that's chronological? You can give them either a chronological resume, which we write those as well. We write both of them, a 1-page functional and a 2-page chronological. But you can also do a PDF of your LinkedIn. If you've got a really good LinkedIn profile, then you can do that. Now, something else too, in the sticky note up top, I would like Lacey or Brian to put in the sticky note the link to get more interview videos. In other words, I've got a whole lot of interview videos that I would love to give you for free. All you have to do is put your email address in there, and then you'll start to get a series of interview videos that will give you not only the phone interviewing, but also the face-to-face interviewing, and all of the big questions like what's your greatest weakness and what's your leadership style and stuff like that. So if you want those, then either Brian or Lacey are going to put that up in the sticky note piece. So Mihir says connecting with recruiters to ask them to consider you for specific roles. And that again is, I would go through LinkedIn. You're going to find that they're more likely to connect with you on LinkedIn and actually answer, because they are on LinkedIn. In fact, I had read that 97% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find their next talent, their best talent. So use LinkedIn extensively to find your recruiting talent. Okay. And then, Iced. Oh, I butcher that every week. Finding businesses I would love to work for. You're not going to know if you want to work there or if you'd love to work there until you talk with them. In other words, they may be a great company. They just have a bad website. So if they've got a bad website, don't brush them off. I would apply to anything that meets your search criteria as a company. In other words, if you're going to reach out to companies individually, these are the things that you want to look at. You want to look at size company. So that could be number of people or annual revenue. And so if you're looking at annual revenue, you can look at owler.com, and it's OWLER, owler.com, and that gives you the revenue of the private companies. It gives an estimated revenue. It's pretty accurate though. And then it could be annual revenue, or it could be number of people. So the size company, the geographic location, the industry, and then you would try to find the person that would be your boss in the company that you want to work for based upon that search criteria. And then you would go after that person that would be your boss, and you would reach out to them and connect with them on LinkedIn, and then send them a follow-up message to see if they would like to have a conversation. So that's basically entering into the hidden job market. And there's so much more that I could give you on that. I will make a live stream that's just on that. So Audrey says, at what point should I get concerned if not receiving job offers? Well, it depends on what types of places you're applying for, and if you're hearing that you're overqualified, or if you're hearing that you're not qualified. That really, it depends. It's person to person. So that's a really tough question to answer. I would probably say in this economy, prior to COVID, and it depends on how much you're wanting to make. It depends on the size of the market. It depends on how niche your job is. So all of that has a lot of things that's everything that has to do with it, and also how much money you're making. So for instance, it's easier to get a $40,000 job than it is to get a $400,000 job. So if it's gone past 6 months, then that's probably, even after COVID, there are still a lot of companies that are hiring. As you can tell, last month, May, we got 2.5 million jobs created. That's a lot of jobs. So there's going to be a very quick recovery in the job market. I do believe that. And so you're going to see a lot of jobs created, and that means there's a lot of opportunity out there. So if you don't have anything in 6 months, definitely, you could certainly talk to Brian, or you can reach out and talk with us. And so Steve actually says, I'm both looking for a new job and setting up a consulting business. I'm concerned that not being fully focused on one or the other may be causing me to be less effective in both. How do you recommend handling this? Great question, because we have a lot of people in that same situation all the time. And actually, I don't advertise it, but I do consulting on starting your own consulting business. In other words, I help you with the marketing of what you need to have to start your consulting business, and then what you need to do to get lead generation going so that you can get a large contract within 60 days. But if you're doing both at the same time, what I would recommend is that you ask, if you're going to reach out to your targeted person, that you're asking for a job first, and then use the consulting as a smaller ask if they don't have anything available full time. So you might go, I'm looking for a full-time job, and not even mention consulting. And then if they say, well, we don't have anything right now, then you say, well, I also have a consulting shop. So I would be very happy to do things on a project basis if you need me on a project basis. I will tell you that right now, companies are much more likely, and actually it's probably every day, companies are much more likely to pay you for a project than they will to pay you full time, because it's much easier to pay somebody $75,000 for 2 or 3 months worth of work than it is to pay somebody $300,000 a year ad infinitum forever. Okay. So that's the answer to that. Now, I've got a few more questions that I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to answer live questions. I've got 15 minutes left. So Charles has a great question. Thank you, Charles. how do you read the other person, as most communications are nonverbal? Yeah, I mentioned that in a live stream a few weeks ago, that 70% is body movements and 23% is voice inflection, and then 7% is the actual words that people use. So if you're on a phone interview specifically, then you're going to pay attention to whether the person on the other end is actively listening to you. In other words, if they're going, mm-hmm, uh-huh, okay, yes. So if they're listening to you, you know you've got their attention, and that's a good thing. If they're completely silent on the other end, they could be answering an email. They could be checking their phone. They could be doing something else other than talking to you. They're trying to multitask, and you don't have their complete attention. So a lot of times what you have to do is what's called in neuro-linguistic programming a pattern interrupt. So you want to say something completely shocking and different. Not saying that you have to be offensive. That's not it at all. It's just completely like you might tell an outrageous story. Yeah, there was a salesman that brought in, he when he was selling cars, actually, he brought in an elephant to the car lot, and he had the biggest one-day sale sales number than he ever had, simply because he added a live elephant because the circus was in town, and he rented the elephant for the afternoon. So that's a wild story, and people are going, elephant? What? And then all of a sudden you've got their full attention, and then you can start talking the good stuff. I hope that helps. You can't do anything but voice inflection, really, to find out whether they are excited by what you're saying. So one of the things that you can do with a phone call is you can mirror what their communication style is. People like people that communicate like them. So if you're talking to somebody who's loud and fast like me, then you could be more animated on the phone. And that way they like you more and they will pay attention to you more. If they are quiet and very methodical in what they say, then tone yourself down and match that quiet, methodical way of talking. And that way they're going to love you, because they're like, wow, that guy really gets me. That gal really gets me. You're talking exactly the way that they are. And that is what will get you past a gatekeeper into the hiring manager, or it will get you a face-to-face interview versus the not paying attention to the way that they communicate. You do want to pay attention, and you want to mirror that communication style. Okay, so Christine emailed me and had a lot of questions. Okay, so there's a lot of questions here. I'm going to answer maybe one or two of them. One is, when on a call with a recruiter, what information should I offer and what should I avoid? Well, avoid compensation questions, definitely. The information you should offer, definitely your 3 core strengths, so that they understand your brand, what it is that sets you apart from your competition. And then you should also offer the stories of your achievements. So try to get in 2 or 3 stories that have quantifiable results in them. All right. And if you want to understand how to quantify your results, just in the chat, ask for the live stream with quantifiable results, and we can send you the PDF. We can also send you the live stream replay so that you can get the quantifiable results as well, if you didn't happen to hear that. I believe that was last week. And then she also asks, they always suggest the candidate have a couple of questions to ask the interviewer. What interesting but appropriate questions would you suggest we ask? Great question. Okay. So, and this also goes to another question that somebody else had about, what do you say when you first get on the phone with somebody? So you want to do your research of the company ahead of time so that you can answer the questions of what you can do for them. What's relevant, right? How are you relevant to their pain points? How are you relevant to their aspirations? And you want to do a lot of research about the person and not just the company. So look them up on Twitter, look them up on Facebook, look them up on YouTube. Find out if you can find out anything about them. And the questions that you ask need to be educated questions based upon the research that you found, and they need to be specific questions. For instance, you might say, if it's a public company, for instance, you might say, I saw that you grew 38% last quarter. And because of COVID, or maybe you say 38% first quarter, and because of COVID, how has that affected your growth? And what are your plans to catch up or meet your annual goal? And what is your annual goal? Something like that. So you want to give very specific questions based upon the research that you found about them. So you want to look at the business journal. Remember to put in the name of the company and the city and state in Google Chrome and see what comes up in the first 5 to 6 pages. And do the same thing with the person's name and the city and state, and see what comes up and see if there's anything where they were quoted anywhere. Hopefully they don't have a very common name and it's a very big city, because that might get you a lot of false positives. But definitely find something that's specific that you can ask them about. Also, let me talk a moment about flattery, especially when you first get on the phone with somebody. Flattery works every time as long as it's specific. If it's not specific, then it's going to fall flat. For instance, if you say, I noticed you guys are a really growing company and I really want to get in with a growing company. Oh, that's awful. So you've really got to be very specific about, wow, I saw that in the business journal, you guys were listed as one of the top 10 fastest growing companies in town. That's amazing. So what are your plans now in order to catch up with that? I mean, are you having growing pains, or what has been the biggest challenge around the growth that you've experienced? There, it's very specific. It's telling them exactly what you saw, and it's telling them where you saw it, and then you get a question that's around that information that you just gathered from them. All right, let me look at any other questions. Okay, how do I get discovered by executive recruiters? Jenny asks, how do I get discovered by executive recruiters? There's a lot of questions about recruiters in this last week. So with recruiters, I would say you want to reach out to those recruiters that you want to have a conversation with. And they're more likely to have a conversation with you than, for instance, a hiring manager. So reach out to those executive recruiters. If you're not finding that people are reaching out to you, I would say probably do 2 things on your LinkedIn profile in order to get found by recruiters. The first is change your headline, which is the line underneath your name, to a value proposition statement instead of the job title and where you work. That's what usually pops up. That's the default. However, I want you to change it to what it is that you are, for instance, an operational turnaround expert, and then what it is that you do and who you do it for. So helping small to medium-sized businesses grow in a sustainable way, something like that. Or expanding profit through smart process improvement. So it's a headline. Think of it as a headline. And that way they're going to be more captured by what you say versus just your job title. All right. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you go down to the skills section and you put in 50 skills. You can have up to 50 skills and make them not industry specific, but transferable skills. If you want a list of 208 transferable skills, again, put that in put it in the chat and just say transferable skills, and we will get you 208 transferable skills. I've got a document that I put together called the Ultimate Keyword Toolkit. I'd be very happy to give it to you. So I'm giving away freebies like crazy today. Sorry about that, Lacey. I'll take care of them. You don't have to. You're on vacation. So if you want to fill that up with 50 different skills, make sure that they are, if you're looking for a leadership position, make sure they're very leadership-based skills, like, for instance, mentoring, executive leadership, like project management, process improvement. There's a lot of things that you can put in the skills that people are looking for. So what are people looking for in the type of job that you're looking to do? Not what you've done in the past, but what you want to do next. Fill your 50 skills with those things that are relevant to what you want to do next. All right. Okay. I've just got 5 more minutes left. And so I'm going to go to chat, and I'm also I would invite Brian, my husband, and Lacey to text me. I know that you guys have been texting me furiously over the last few times here. Okay, I was asked in an interview. This is something from Brian, but he doesn't tell me who asked it. Says how I add to an organization's diversity. That's really interesting. So it says, I answered about my background in multiple different disciplines, but I wonder how you might answer something like that. That's a very strange question. So how I add to an organization's diversity? I would talk about not only the diversity of your background, which you did, and that's actually a good answer, but I would also talk about diversity of thought, because I think that this is my personal opinion, that diversity and inclusion in corporate America helps, number one, because it helps the diverse culture, but I think also it helps in the diversity of thought, the diversity of ideas, because you really want to have a team and many teams where there's a whole lot of different ideas that come to the table in team meetings or in project management, process improvement, really just any way that you've thought about things differently than other people. So what is it that makes you unique or special? Again, you could go back to those 3 core strengths, because that's what you would be adding from a diverse thought perspective or a diverse background perspective. And let's see, we've got, okay. Question, what's the best approach in timing and positioning to ask for contacts? It says, I'm trying to time my email to personal/business contacts. Feel I can only email them once asking for opportunities since COVID is still here. So the question is, what's the best approach in timing and positioning to ask for contacts? Excellent question. So because of COVID, yes, you don't want to bug them. You don't want to be a pest. So first of all, make sure that your LinkedIn is stellar. Make sure that you've got a great LinkedIn profile. And we've got, you could go back to, you could go to my YouTube page, which is Tammy Kabell, Kabell, and you can find all of my live streams. And you'll find in one of the live streams that I did talk about exactly what to do in LinkedIn to make your LinkedIn profile really stellar. So I would first make sure your LinkedIn profile is awesome. Then I would also see if you could add some recommendations. So I would ask for LinkedIn recommendations as well. And then make sure your resume is in order, because there might be somebody that says, well, give me your resume and I'll pass it along. Or what I would recommend you do as far as the how is ask for the person's name and where they work, and then you reach out to them and say, hey, I was corresponding with Bob the other day and he recommended I reach out to you. And that way you're not being passive and you're not just waiting for somebody else to help you out. You really want to be as active as possible. And the person that is your friend or your colleague, you want them to do as little as possible to help you out. So I would say definitely go ahead and ask for the person's name and where they work, and then you do the homework and you reach out to them. That way, that person, you're not waiting on that person to help you. Okay. But as far as the approach and timing, the approach is to ask them for the name and the company name, and then also as far as the timing, wait until you've got a great resume, until you've got a great LinkedIn profile. In other words, your personal brand is beautiful, and they know exactly what it is that you bring to any position that you're looking for. That once you've got that, then you ask for somebody to talk to, okay, whether it's a recruiter or not. And then I understand we're about to wrap up here. The last one is, how do you find a new career? I've taken all of the Myers-Briggs type tests. Oh yeah, everybody has. I remember those. My background's in psychology, so I remember administering all that kind of stuff. Will that deter someone from hiring me? I want to be done with commercial real estate, and it's been crickets when applying. I completely understand with commercial real estate. Definitely understand that. As far as the tests, I wouldn't put anything out there as far as the tests go. I wouldn't bring those up in a hiring process at all, because you definitely don't want to, just because you're a certain type of a DISC profile or a certain type of Myers-Briggs, I don't want them to filter you out just because of that. And so I don't put a lot of stock into those type of tests. But I'm not a career counselor, so I'm, my forte is not helping someone find what it is that they want to do when they grow up. It's really helping them find that job that's perfect for them and also get them paid what they're worth. But definitely, I would recommend getting out of commercial real estate. I think it's just going to continue to tank. It's not going to look good for the next couple of years, especially when people are actually doing, they're going more remote. So for instance, Twitter is now saying, Jack Dorsey is saying, everybody, you can stay home if you want to. So they're probably going to sell that big, beautiful place in Silicon Valley. Okay. That's all the time we've got for today. I really, really thank you guys for sticking along with me. Looks like our chat is really, really full. So I'm going to look through that. If I don't get to you today, I will definitely get the information out to you tomorrow. And then by the weekend, you're going to have all the information that you need, because Lacey is on vacation. I don't want to make her have to do that on vacation. So thank you so much. And thank you for letting me know that what you want is a way to actually not get crickets or black hole syndrome. So it's a different style of interviewing, and also how to work on your resume. So we're going to cover, we might do resumes next week, and then how to enter the hidden job market after that, because I want you to have a great brand before you go out there and try to hunt down people in a different way. So that's what I got for you today. I'm going to go ahead and leave this open for the chat so that you can continue to chat if you want to, if you have questions that you want me to answer, if there's any other information that you want. And then if you found this helpful, please let me know. I would really love to hear that this was good information for you and that you found something valuable out of this. In fact, I would love for you to tell me what was the very best thing that you found, the biggest aha for today. What was that biggest aha for you today? So put that in the chat, because I tell you, I read these every single week, and I love hearing what really resonated with you and what is really going to help you in your job search. All right. So let me know what it is that you love about the information that I gave you, what it is that you found most helpful. And then if you've got any other questions that you'd like us to answer, put those in and I will add those to the queue so that we can always answer those next week. So again, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, especially because we're going on 90 minutes. So I really appreciate it. And I will leave this chat up for the next 5 minutes, and you can add your accolades and anything else that you want me to read over the weekend. And if you've got anything else that you want me to send you, please put that in the chat, and I'll be very happy to do so. Thank you so much again, and have a great weekend, and I will talk to you next week. Bye now.